Let's start things off, though. Yankees are 23-8. It was 7-7 last night with the Yankees and White Sox, and it kind of looked like, contending teams head-to-head. A lot of power in there. Obviously, Stanton, Judge, Yohan Moncada tied it up. It was 7-7, and then Ronnie, blowout city. Yankees put up like a 7 spot in the 8th, blew it out.
You see this happen to relievers all the time, and Joe Kelly's been one of the best in his time. He just could not get out of the inning. Some unfortunate things, of course, his lack of control at times.
Was Tony La Russa a little late on that? We're not doing managerial check. We're not going to stop that. But even on the broadcast, it was like he seemed to be a little late in getting Kelly out of there. Was he just dinked and dunked out of there?
I think this is a reflection of just the relentless quality of the Yankees at bats. Just such a grueling lineup to go through. You think you trust the guy on the mound, and then they just wear that guy down. They do it every night. Yeah, it was 2 walks. Then there was a little dink, and then it just got out of control. But by the time it was done, he gives up 5 runs. So it was too late. But I don't know how you control it.
When you're sitting there as the manager, you have a reliever in there that can get the job done. He goes 1-2, gets the first 2 outs really quickly. So now you're thinking, okay, even if he gets a couple of base runners, he's going to get himself through this inning. It just never happened.
Yeah, I remember bringing that up with Bobby Valentine one time. Love Bobby Valentine. and I'd say, hey, after he gives up this, and he goes, when did you get the guy up? Right, and if you get the first 2 outs, well, nobody's up. So at what point do you get even? You got to get human being up and throwing, make the phone call, do all that stuff. So we're not beating him up on that. Meantime, this has come up for discussion, and I've thrown it out there, and Yankee fans even know. Look, Giancarlo Stanton right now has a weighted runs created plus of 148, or OPS plus. They're usually very similar in where they arrive. 311 on base, 527 slugging. But you ask most Yankee fans, and look, I get it. I'm watching too. I see a lot of non-competitive at-bats, and then I see him just bash in the other team and pummel them. But just to be fair, here's what Stanton did when he was with the Marlins, 2012 to 2017, and what he's done with the Yankees. There's a big drop-off, right? And you see the games, you see the home runs, average. The OPS plus basically tells you the story, 151 to 135, and his WAR per 650. Even that's a little misleading because if he just did straight WAR, he's not playing as often. But again, it's a different player. It's a ton of swing and miss. But, Ronnie, it's a ton of power. Is this a good ball player? Or is this, I guess, for $29 million, is this a great ball player?
Well, that's the problem. I think he's a good ball player, and at times he can be the biggest hitter on the planet. I think what you have here is similar to what you had with Pujols in Anaheim, and that is you have a contract that saddles a really good player, a great athlete, and puts such a burden on what he does that, to me, he can never live up to the money that he's making. And I think what also has happened, when I think of Giancarlo Stanton, I think of his contract first. I think of the strikeouts. There's a lot of those. I think of the trade. It was always like one of those important things that was going to propel the Yankees to a different stratosphere, and then that never happened.
Look, he's it's polarizing because, right, obviously the production is there, but I'll just give you a quick example. His first 15 games, he had a 213 on base, slugging 322. He's not doing anything. He also had 22 strikeouts, 1 walk. First 14 games here, 22 strikeouts, 1 walk. Now, the next 14 games, 410 on base, slugging 755, right? So I don't even worry about the strikeouts and the walks at that point. But there is feast or famine, and when you're watching it game to game, especially, I believe, I haven't done the research on this, against good pitching, there's a lot of famine. And we know come playoff time, you're going to be facing top pitching. Is that a misguided notion or not?
Is it a misguided notion? It's real. The swing and miss is real. It's part of his game. It's an unavoidable part of his game. But when I look at this player, he's a force. He's a presence. There's some metrics out there maybe you should take a look at sometime. Barrels per plate appearance. Guess who ranks #1 in the big leagues? It's Giancarlo Stanton.
Can I stop you?
Average exit velocity. Who ranks #1 in the big leagues? It's Giancarlo Stanton.
I like that you're going state-of-the-art sabermetrics because now I can go the other way on that. He was among the league leaders. He was top 5 in the league when he absolutely flat-out stunk, right? When he was miserable. I'm talking when he was at a 322 slugging. He was hitting 203 with one walk, so he's not even getting on base, and he was still on those leaderboards. So, yeah, I think that points out, and I'm serious about this with the metrics, it's hard to barrel up the ball. You're only going to do it one every, 20 times. He'll do that. But what about the other 19? What's he doing in those at-bats? So you can be on that leaderboard and still not be a good player. There you go.
Well, he's not a perfect player. He's a flawed player, but he's still an important player. They lead the major leagues in those same categories too. Barrels per plate appearance, average exit velocity. Doesn't that seem like a related development?
Didn't they do that last year? And still, when you have a ton of swing and miss, you're a very predictable lineup, and they were great or they were bad, which you even it out, it's mediocre, which is what they were last year.
Right. That's still part of who they are, and it's something I think we have to watch as the season goes along. But I'd like to ask you, Ron.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm a pitcher, and I know that Judge and Stanton are looming, don't I know when those two guys are coming up? What other lineup has two guys like that?
Well, 100%. I think when you look at Giancarlo now, you're right. I think he's a more streaky player than when he played in Miami. I also look at the force that he is. And it's not only him. If you're staring down this lineup, you're looking at Rizzo, LeMahieu, Judge, Stanton, Gallo. Some of the biggest players in the game are in that lineup, and he provides the spark that he did in last night's game. But I think you're burdened. He's burdened by two things. The contract, which you'll always compare and say, listen, he's not worth that contract. And second, and most important, is that if you're a big-time player and you're brought into the Yankees, you're there for one thing. And once you get that championship, you are looked at differently than ever before. CC Sabathia's time is regal, because when he was brought in,
you win a title year one.
Yes.
That helps.
That helps. Okay.
I wanted to point something out. He hasn't even gotten to the Pujols part of his contract yet, where he's an aging guy with diminishing skills. These are supposed to be the prime years, even though he's 32, but these were supposed to be the great years, and there's 6 more to come.
Okay, couple things. One, in the postseason, we're talking about a guy who is slugging over 700 as a Yankee. That's kind of a meaningful time of year in New York. Second thing on the contract. Once he opted in, there were 7 years left on that deal. The Marlins had to pay $30 million of that contract. So it's $188 for 7. That comes to what, 26, 27 a year? Tell me that the Yankees can't absorb that. I feel like they can. It's the Yankees.
It limits what the last couple of years, though, where Brian Cashman has been quiet on the position player market, I think a lot of it has to do with you're tied up to the money and the position. Just like with Pujols, it's not the money. It's not. Yeah. You make more money, but you can go over budget. But he's occupying those slots, especially a lot of DH slots.
I'm not going to disagree, but how is the contract his fault?
No.
How is that trade his fault? The Yankees made the trade and agreed to pay him the money.
Well, no, nothing is his fault on that, except he's the player that he is. I thought that was a mistake that the Yankees made. I think if the Yankees could look back now, let me ask you this: if the Yankees could look back now and say, "Hey, we could go back in time and not make that trade," would they do it?
No, they wouldn't make it.
They would make it.
Yeah, they would make it. And think about it one step further. Does it have any bearing on what they have to pay Aaron Judge at some point?